Claire Reynolds had been a nurse for 5 years, and most of her shifts blurred into each other: fluorescent lights, routine vitals, exhausted patients, and the occasional emergency that spiked her adrenaline. But that night was different. The name on her chart made her stop mid-step: Daniel Carrington. Billionaire tech mogul. Reclusive. Rumored to be dying. Room 721. She knocked lightly and pushed the door open. The man inside was sitting up, barely. His once famous dark hair was streaked with silver, his face pale and thin, but his eyes were alert, cold, and piercing. He looked like someone who had fought death every day and wasn't sure if he'd won or lost yet. "You're Claire?" he asked, his voice gravelly. "Yes. Night nurse. I'm covering your floor tonight," she said, walking in. He stared at her with unnerving stillness. "I need you to do something for me." "Something unusual." She raised an eyebrow. "Unusual how?" "I need you to pretend to be my wife. Just for tonight." Claire blinked. She had heard some crazy things in her career, but this. "Excuse me. My lawyer is on his way. There are complications with my estate. My next of kin is a brother I haven't spoken to in 10 years. They're circling like vultures. But if I'm married, you, my wife, would have the rights I need to finalize everything. You'd just need to sign a few papers with me, wear a ring, and be in the room while we meet." Claire looked at him in disbelief. "You want me to marry you? Right now?" "Not marry. Pretend. Just for the records. And in return, I'll pay you $750,000. Half up front." She stared. This wasn't a proposition. It was a transaction. Cold. Logical. But as insane as it sounded, her brain began to calculate. Her mother's spinal surgery had been postponed 3 times. Her sister, Casey, had just dropped out of school because she couldn't afford tuition. Claire herself was drowning in debt. That money would change everything. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "You're kind. You're smart. And I don't have time to find anyone else," he replied. "And something tells me you're the type of person who shows up when people need her." She exhaled slowly. "I'll do it. But only for tonight. After that, we're strangers again." He gave a small, tired smile. "Fair enough." Within an hour, Claire stood beside Daniel in a private lounge repurposed for a quick ceremony. His assistant had brought her a simple dress, navy blue, elegant, and a ring box with a sapphire stone the size of her thumbnail. She hadn't asked how many assistants he had or where this dress came from. She didn't want to know. A city official stood before them, flanked by Daniel's lawyer and a silent woman from the Department of Health, there to oversee the transfer of medical proxy. Daniel stood straight, but Claire saw the tremble in his hand as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "Do you, Daniel Carrington, take this woman?" His voice was barely a whisper. "I do." When it was her turn, Claire glanced at him, this man she didn't know, and repeated the words. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the official said. Daniel nodded to the lawyer, and the legal documents were signed, with Claire listed as his spouse and medical proxy. The woman from the Department of Health shook Claire's hand. "It's good to see patients cared for by someone they trust. It's rare." Claire forced a smile. "He's in good hands." As the room emptied, she turned to Daniel. "So, the check." But his face had gone pale. He swayed. "Claire," and collapsed into her arms. Chaos erupted. Nurses rushed in. Code Blue rang out. Claire leapt into action, already halfway through CPR by the time the crash cart arrived. Her heart pounded as she fought to bring him back. Her hands on his chest, breath after breath, shouting instructions with desperation. He stabilized, barely. The ICU doctors took over, but Claire refused to leave his side. She sat in a chair beside his bed through the night, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. Around 4 a.m., his eyes fluttered open. "You should have taken the money and run," he whispered. She shook her head. "You could have died." He smirked. "Would you have cried?" "Only because it would have made the paperwork more complicated." He gave a weak laugh. Something shifted between them then, a subtle thread that bound them tighter than the papers they had just signed. The next morning, when Claire tried to return to her normal duties, she was pulled aside by her supervisor. "Mr. Carrington has requested that you be assigned as his primary nurse. His team approved it." Claire blinked. "What? Why? You tell me." She didn't know why she said yes. Maybe it was the guilt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe it was because she couldn't stop thinking about the way he looked at her in that hospital bed, not like a patient. Like a man who'd forgotten how to be touched. Each day, she came to room 721. And each day, something inside both of them softened. They talked. About music, about books. She discovered he played piano once, as a child. That he never had time for friends. That he hated how people flinched when they heard his name. She told him about her father, how he died in a small hospital in Kansas with bills unpaid and lungs full of regret. How she became a nurse not out of ambition, but revenge. Because if she couldn't beat death, at least she could try to delay it. "You don't look like someone who's angry," he said once. "That's because I've gotten very good at hiding it." He started eating again, walking. His color returned. So did his sarcasm. They laughed. At old sitcoms. At themselves. At the absurdity of a fake marriage built in a hospital. One evening, while helping him back into bed, their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. Claire sat beside him, knees nearly touching, heart racing. "I didn't expect this," he murmured. "Neither did I." They didn't kiss. Not yet. But something passed between them, not just electricity. A quiet understanding. The kind that asks, what if this wasn't pretend? Then came the unthinkable. It was just past midnight. Claire had fallen asleep in the chair, Daniel snoring softly, when the monitor screamed. His vitals plunged. Staff poured in. He was in full cardiac arrest. She was pushed back as doctors worked. Again, she watched him slip away. Again, she felt helpless. But this time, he didn't come back. At 1:14 a.m., he was pronounced dead. Claire stood outside the room in the blue dress she hadn't returned. The ring still on her finger. She felt hollow. She hadn't realized how much of her heart had wandered into that room until it shattered on the tile floor. She cried silently. Not as a nurse. Not as a wife. Just as Claire. Daniel's lawyer found her the next morning. "There's something you need to see," he said, handing her a sealed envelope. Inside, in Daniel's unmistakable handwriting. "Greater than Claire. If you're reading this, I didn't make it. I'm sorry. I meant what I said. You were the first real thing I'd had in a long, long time. The marriage. It was real. Not pretend. I filed the change 2 nights ago. You're my legal wife. And with that comes my controlling interest in Carrington Global. It's yours now. Not because I wanted to buy your kindness. But because I believe the world needs someone like you to decide what happens next. Live a big life. Daniel." Claire stared at the paper. She could barely breathe. In one night, she had become a wife, a widow, and now an heiress to a tech empire she didn't want. She left the hospital without a word. For days, the media hounded her. Rumors flew. Gold digger, scam artist, secret lover. She said nothing. She didn't attend the press conferences. She didn't show up at the will reading. But when she finally appeared again, she walked into the headquarters of Carrington Global in a plain black suit and told the board, "I'm not Daniel. I'm not here to run this company. But I am here to fulfill his final wish." She donated millions to open free clinics across the country. She erased medical debt for thousands. She created scholarships for nurses from underserved areas. The headlines changed. So did the world. 6 months later, Claire visited Daniel's grave in Maine. She knelt in the grass, fingers brushing the stone. "I didn't believe in fate," she whispered. "But maybe you were mine." She laid her ring down beside his. And walked away. Not as a nurse. Not as a wife. But as someone forever changed by a love that started as a lie, and became the most real thing she'd ever known.